523 punishing off-road kilometres, a field of over 150 competitors and 2 days of the roughest, toughest conditions. This is the awesome motorsport cocktail that will make up the 2008 Kickstarters Gascoyne Dash. Settle in as some of the state's best riders and drivers battle the elements for the next 2 days in what is quickly becoming one of the best off-road events in the country. Following the Friday afternoon prologue, Day 1's competition will test the crews with a 185-kilometre loop in and out of the event's headquarters, located 200 kilometres east of the coastal town of Carnarvon. Travelling via the famous Gascoyne Junction, the outback station of Coonathur will become home for the next couple of days. Part 2 of racing will include the event's namesake and a run of over 140 kilometres down the Gascoyne River. Rocky Pool will become the halfway rest for the sure-to-be-weary competitors before they saddle up again for the absolute flat-out run to the finish at the Carnarvon Racecourse. Testament to the success of this event and to the passion of the enthusiastic event committee, this year's Dash will boast even bigger entry numbers, with the bikes and car field swelling to record levels. The two-wheel Titans will challenge outback conditions across 4 classes, ranging from the over 450cc thumpers to the smaller capacity two-strokes. The quad races have also upped their ante, increasing their numbers to just under 30 bikes. Complementing the diversity of the event is the range of machines chosen by the competitors. The major players in Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki and KTM all represented in strong numbers. The change of configuration, horsepower and physical size of the modern competition machine has had a major effect on these types of events. Manufacturers like KTM stepping up with their versions of terrain-busting units, from their 250cc two-strokes through to their massive 525cc four-stroke monster. For the moto manufacturers, this is a true test of their respective products. The Gas Dash throwing just about every imaginable type of terrain at the machines over the course of the 2 days. For the 128-strong bike division, there would be plenty of familiar faces. Defending champion Vern Strange, local men Stephen the Duck Mitchell and last year's third-place rider Ted Godden, all back with a vengeance. Adding to the lineup is 2 times previous Dash competitor Warren Strange, on board the V-twin 550 Aprilia, and not shy for a good battle with brother Vern. This will certainly be a tussle to keep an eye on. Like many of the riders, this event is a favourite for Warren, with plenty of challenges.
Oh, it's a fantastic event. I've said it a few times before, and always try to encourage other riders to come here because it's a great atmosphere and it's a challenging track. It's more challenging than the Fink track. The Fink Desert Race, which is Northern Territory race, is challenging also in a different way. This is more technical. There's some pretty gnarly rocky hills and stuff that you don't get in the Fink, so it makes this track quite challenging.
The four-wheeled moto start list would also be top-heavy with quality. 07 winner Richard Maxted charged up and ready, with John Luliano on board the Yamaha Raptor back for another tilt at the title. For the auto division, the 3-car Robertson outfit would spearhead a top-flight field. The black purpose-built desert racers would be joined by fellow pro buggy man Brad Cooper, who would be debuting his latest Bat Monster, sporting plenty of colour. Local pride would rest with the father and son Renton combination, with a switch to an all-blue livery for the Jimco, rounding out the class Mad Max Pilmer on board the older but just as spectacular V8. The smaller capacity buggies would number 4 across 2 classes, and the diversity in the sedan category would again show, with a further 14 cars, ranging from big horsepower V8s through to the regular runners in the tough Suzuki Sierras. A 12-kilometre section of track would make up the prologue circuit, this flat-out sprint to determine the start order for Saturday's run. The 25-strong car field would get away first, with the Robinsons off in formation. For Travis, this would be his first time as driver in the Dash. The youngest of the clan wasting no time, a clean, fast run, netting him the #1 spot with the slimmest of margins. Two-time winner dad, Brian, would take second fastest, less than a second off the Travis pace, and set himself up well for the leg 1 loop. Now, even with this man's vast experience, there'll be plenty to be wary of as he lines up the Porter bright and early tomorrow.
Although it's on the same track, every year it gets either exposes more roots, exposes more rocks, corners get washed out, and the rain. We've had a tremendous amount of rain here, so there's corners that we thought that were full flowing. They've got 12-inch culverts in them. So yeah, no, it's going to be a lot different.
Third home and a trifecta for the Out of Bounds race team. Last year's runner-up, Bo Robinson. Another smooth run, his Mendiola not missing a beat, taking to the circuit like he owned it, just 4 seconds adrift of the time set by Travis and Brian. It would not be smooth sailing for all in the auto division. The Styles rear combination stranded just a few Ks from the finish line, a sheared swing arm bolt being the culprit. The Range Rover of Stephen Amor having to pull up 3 times with a rogue fan belt, delaying their run, the crew doing very well to get it to the line. Just off the leaders, Brad Cooper would prologue well in the first angry hit-out for his Series 3 bat machine. Max Pilmer and the Carnarvon-based Rentons also front-running buggies that experienced a trouble-free run. The 866 Extreme 4-wheel drive of Mark Murray would be the quickest of the tin tops. The V8-powered Patrol working hard to grab just 3 seconds on the Jackaroo of Povar. This crew managing to keep the always spectacular Frank Galea at bay over the prologue run. The Land Cruiser pumping out a very respectable time of 7:15 over the distance. With the track cleared, all eyes would now focus on the Moto division. As some would have predicted, last year's winner Vern Strange would push hard from the drop of the green. He would open up the YZ450 and take a 20-second lead on the outright bike times. No guessing who would take the fight up to Vern. Brother Warren in the bigger capacity Aprilia grabbing the second spot with a time 9 seconds quicker than the next rider. '07 podium finisher Ted Godden would put his best foot forward with the third quickest and the lead of a very tightly packed bunch. Just 10 seconds separated position 3 to position 10. These results are a definite reminder of just how hot the pace is going to be come tomorrow's start time. A couple of names familiar from last year, where they also prologued well, was Honda pilot Ivan Ursig, 6th fastest, and Stephen Mitchell, a second back with a time of 5:57. 8th outright over the distance, and first KTM jockey Darren Waters charged past to put himself in contention for day 1. As to be expected, the quad battle would be on from the word go. Kirk Williams, astride the 114 Yamaha, led the class, albeit by just 4 seconds over the distance. Dale Harris, a good ride to grab the number 2 spot, and 13 seconds back it would be the sweet-sounding Raptor of Ivan Abreu. Defending champ Richard Maxted, another 5 seconds adrift, but certainly well placed for tomorrow's huge 185k loop. Wrapping up the prologue sees the Out of Bounds racing team taking spots 1, 2 and 3. Brad Cooper jams the new bat into 4th, and Max Pilmer showing that old school is still in school by making up the top 5. After just 12 competitive kilometres of prologue, Vern Strange would top the times. Brother Warren 20 seconds back took the number 2 spot, with Ted Godden 3rd and a fine 4th for Suzuki man Daniel Woodman. He's a rider that was quick on last year's event, but unfortunately not getting through leg 1. One to keep an eye on. Paul Brown makes up the top 5, just 2 seconds behind. A good clean run for the Honda rider. Kirk Williams will lead the quads away in the morning. Dale Harris taking 2nd spot with Ivan Abreu just ahead of Richard Maxted and Adam Gilbert on board the KTM rounding out the top 5. It would still be dark as the auto field assembled for their driver briefing. An early morning start designed to be able to get the cars almost to the finish line before the bikes were to be sent off for their crack at Leg 1. From the outset, it would be clear that no team orders were in place as far as the Robinson clan would be concerned. This is Travis and co-driver Paul Curry giving it what seemed to be all it could take. The ex-Buddy Crow Jimco wound up and angry as it chewed up the desert terrain. The awesome Porter car of Brian would be next down the line, and as you'd expect, utilising the history he has with this event, it would again be a full-on attack in the early Ks, exploiting the raw power of the Black Beast. Within just 20 clicks of this Leg 1 loop, it was obvious that dust would play a big part. The number 3 Robinson machine, Bo at the wheel, just as committed over this fast section, mindful that in the tight stuff he may be slowed by the dust from the lead cars. Brad Cooper would be relishing the opportunity to open up his new toy. The sweet sound of the V8 at full throttle is just what he would be looking for. So far, so good for the bat. Proving that age of your machine should be no barrier, Max Pilmer gives it total commitment with plenty of sideways action. And one of the few crews to get this corner bang on, the Renton combination looking serious with the loud pedal very close to 100%, the Jimco loving every last RPM. After a long night of repairs, the 199 machine would make the start line, albeit with a makeshift fix. Not being able to sort yesterday's swing arm bolt 100%, today's huge loop would be an anxious one for the crew, hoping their interim repair would hold. Another one with drama in prologue yesterday, the Range Rover of Steve Amore. However, they would not have the same worries. His team happy with the fix, giving the crew the opportunity to push hard from the flag. As the mid-pack runners filed through, it didn't take long for the conditions to bite. Barely 40 kilometres into the leg punches would be an issue. The number 80 buggy of Larson and Don with a shredded left rear. Not so far up the track, another crew with a stop and change problem, the 866 Hoylake Transport Nissan Patrol losing valuable time. Back in the pack, the familiar battle of the Suzukis would get underway. The Organ Donation 752 production class car would lead them away after a good prologue time. This group may be small in stature, but certainly make up for it in determination, pushing hard over the challenging conditions. Back to the leaders now, and the 86 Jimco powering through the stage. Clear air, and from here looking like it was under control, but as we all know, motorsport can be very tough, and the first car on the road makes navigating the course extremely challenging. At this marker, it went all wrong. The track hidden, and these guys are off course. It was now very evident that they were way off track and losing valuable time getting back on. Not that it was much comfort, but they would soon be joined by many more of the crews, all desperately searching for the correct piece of road. With critical time lost, the respective teams managed to get back on course proper. However, from the air, it would be the 84 machine of Brian Robinson that would emerge leading the cars. Just back, the reason now evident, after getting on track in the lead, it appeared that more bad luck would come to Travis and Paul. A front right-hand puncher now dramatically slowing the car. In all the confusion, several road positions had changed. The third out-of-bounds car of Bo Robinson found himself way back in the field and needing to play catch-up. Here taking the wide line in the pursuit of the Renton combination. Up and down the field, the challenging course began to hit hard with terminal dramas for several of the competitors. Max Pilmer would not complete the section. The spectacular Land Cruiser of Frank Galea would blow the front diff, eventually resulting in getting stuck in a river section with a lack of traction. Leg 1 would also claim the Suzuki of Tara Mason. One of the luckier crews was that of Barton and Ingham. After coming to grief and rolling the next car along, the 222 buggy of Simkin and Pilati were on hand to help right the machine and get the boys free.
Oh, there was a ditch there, I just didn't see it, there was no sign, I just didn't see it, hit it too hard, did a bit cockeyed and launched it. She just went up in the air and I lost it, couldn't hold it.
On these type of events, the next competitor along is often the lifeline. There was no hesitation from the Super 1650 crew with immediate assistance rendered.
Two boys are all right, it's just a bit hard for them to get out. So we managed to push them out and they're okay.
In the final wash-up after losing time off track, getting their service crew to change a puncher at the checkpoint and spending time stuck on a log, the number 86 out-of-bounds team would get to the finish line in first place, 12.5 minutes quicker than Dad Bryan. After he took over the lead halfway into the lap, the 84 car also suffered a puncture and had to stop to change, allowing Travis through. Bo, who did a massive job of making up a heap of ground, would unfortunately fall foul of the conditions, breaking a right front hub component. He's day one over. After a great early debut of the Binjara Engineering bat machine, Brad Cooper's day would end with plenty of drama and disappointment.
And blew a tyre and then we tried to jack it up and we had problems with our jack. The seal blew on the jack and then I shut the engine off thinking we'll drive in on a flat tyre, and then I went to start it up again and nothing happened. I was flat batteries and couldn't move anywhere from there, so we're out of the race.
These problems allowing third place to go to the Styles rear pairing. Although getting caught up in the off-course scenario earlier in the leg, they kept it clean and consistent from there until the end and grabbed a well-deserved podium finish. Another exceptional result would be that of Stephen Amore, the 847 Extreme four-wheel drive not missing a beat and taking fourth place with the local Renton combination fifth in the Jimco. As is the case with the Dash, it's been another very tough day of competition. And for experienced dirt man, but newcomer to this event, Niaz Ali, day one was certainly an eye-opener.
Yes, it is the first time on the Gascoyne Dash and absolutely loving it. Never driven in my whole life on roads like this. They've got to be the roughest roads that can ever be tackled in a high-speed motor car. And we're driving a conventional sort of a motor car, so it makes the challenge even harder.
There may have been a little inexperience with the event on the driver's side, but quite the opposite in the co-driver's seat. Many times competitor and one of the original members of the first organising committee, Kim Epton, knows the event from its days as a boat race.
The water came up in the Gascoyne River, so we got a whole lot of boats up from Perth and guys from Carnarvon, and we put together a river race from Gascoyne Junction crossing down to the Carnarvon Yacht Club. And then we waited for the water to come up the next year, and obviously it wasn't going to come up, so we thought, right, we'll still have the Gascoyne Dash, but it'll be a dry one rather than a wet one.
A huge supporter of off-road racing, and in particular this event, is Dirt Comp magazine. Editor Randall Kilner putting the Gas Dash high on the magazine must-do list. Its uniqueness a magnet for the press.
An event like this is, there's a couple of different sides to it that you really need to cover. There's the genuine action, you know, so the guys flying over jumps and leaping high and sliding around corners and that sort of thing. And then it's also pretty important to capture the environment. Like we're in such a stunning part of WA, there is just some magic terrain to sort of, build into the shots as well. So it's, a pretty special event.
Off-road fans will be treated to a smorgasbord of action shots, with Dirt Comp dedicating several pages to a feature on this year's event. With the awesome backdrop of the rugged Gascoyne region, spectators waited in anticipation of what would be a huge battle in the moto division. Just under 200 punishing kilometres would be laid on for those willing to push it to the limit. With the organisers deciding to run the competitors off in pairs for the first 10 and then in groups of 4, it made it very interesting for the start. As predicted, Brotherly Love would certainly not get in the way of outright competition. With over 30 Ks completed, Warren led, but by just a few seconds over last year's winner, Vern. It was always going to be a struggle for Vern to beat Warren's Aprilia off the line, and to make things worse, the number one plate holder had a step off in the choking dust just 800 metres from the start, and now was in catch-up mode. Unfortunately for the chasing Vern, his day kept getting worse. Halfway from the start to the first checkpoint, he copped a puncher on the rear and had to, of course, slow. He still managed to get to the first service stop in second spot, although now well down on Warren. The good news, there would be a spare wheel and tyre. The bad news, it was a different configuration requiring some adjustments, and what would normally be a 3 to 4 minute fix cost triple, and now having to leave the checkpoint in 19th spot with one hell of a ride required. Out front, the number 13 Aprilia would continue with a smooth, fast and trouble-free run, the huge horsepower being used to great advantage by Warren. Just back from the lead, the pace would also be hot from the start. Lone Suzuki man Daniel Woodman would grab a small lead on the number 3 machine of Ted Godden. After a good prologue, he would be kept busy with the hard-charging Paul Brown. The 4-stroke Honda working overtime, as he would also need to keep an eye on the KTM of Darren Waters coming in fast. Although getting a reasonable prologue time, the 08 Dash would be one to forget for the Duck Stephen Mitchell. Bike dramas just before the event, meaning a switch to his 06 machine, and more importantly, a broken hand 10 days outside the start saw the local hotshot having to call it a day 15 kilometres before the first checkpoint. Having hit a washout, he further injured the already weak hand and with great disappointment cruised to the service point and withdrew. Those having a better day included the number 7 Honda man Chad Freeman on his way to 8th bike home, and KTM rider Glenn Hancock going hard early and rewarded with eventually finishing Saturday's run in 7th spot. In the smaller capacity classes, Kevin O'Brien's number 12 Yamaha would be home first in the over 250cc 2-stroke group. Station owner Lachlan McTaggart would again provide hundreds of kilometres of his property's tracks for the event to run on. The famous Lockie's Knob spectator point would allow great viewing as the riders grabbed air in a salute, and in Wade Bransgrove's case, he would also be the lead bike in the up to 250cc 4-stroke class. There would be several refuel and checkpoints on day one, and none more important than the last at Pels. As the lead riders approached, the organisers decided to hold the field so as to allow for all the Auto Division competitors to get into the finish at Coonathur. Unfortunately, due to some confusion, the first rider on the road, Warren Strange, misunderstood the marshal's directions. Consequently, he proceeded on, this later creating some interesting discussions with the stewards. This, however, would not be Warren's only concern, as although he would lead the field back to the finish line with a good pace, the end of leg results would show his time of 2 hours, 19 minutes and 19 seconds to be second quickest. Carnarvon young gun Paul Brown would be the man to beat on day one. An awesome ride over the mixed conditions, his CRF 450 performing faultlessly. His time over the massive distance, 1 minute 23 seconds faster than the competition. This guy is already considered one of the quickest motocross riders in the region, and with this type of performance he is quickly being recognised as a hot prospect in the desert. Another Honda man with reason to be smiling was Ivan Urseg. At the conclusion of leg one, he would hold down third place just over a minute behind Warren Strange. Daniel Woodman would continue his good start to the day's run and finish a fine fourth, just 1 second behind Urseg. Probably one of the rides of the day would be that of Vern Strange. After dropping down to as low as 19th, he put together a blistering run to cross the finish line 5th. An amazing effort under huge pressure. Event regular Ted Godden, another with a good first day's run, his time good enough for 6th outright. These days, it's not possible to go to this style of event and not see an absolute knockdown, drag-out battle in the quad division. The 27-strong field certainly didn't disappoint with intense action from the throttle on. Such is the quality of the players, the first 3 places on day 1 were taken out by 3 different brands. The familiar bright orange helmet of Richard Maxted would be the pace setter on the first loop. It was not all plain sailing though. 20 k's out from the finish, a left rear flat made it a challenge, and 5 k's from the end, a right flat, Richard wrestling the 104 machine to the finish and a lead of just over a minute. Brad Smith would take up the second spot, the Can-Am 450 doing the business over this fast section. Smith's gap back to third, again just over a minute. The 107 Yamaha would take the final podium spot, rider Ivan Abreu very pleased. There would also be some notable names absent from the front and in fact from the finish line altogether. After a very quick prologue time, Dale Harris's event would be over. A big get-off early on in the leg and he had had enough. 07 runner-up John Luliano well down on times, a fuel problem with his Yamaha the culprit, but managing to get back to base. If there was any doubt as to the danger involved in this sport, proof can be waiting just around the corner. Justin King found out the hard way flipping his machine, landing badly and ending up in not very good shape. The good news, of course, is that help was not far. The medical facilities provided by the event organisers quickly swinging into action. In this case, the Medivac chopper on hand, the doctor on the scene quickly, and all precautions including a trip to the Carnarvon Hospital, just part of the huge logistics required for the dash.
This is what will happen. 2 strokes, we'll put the oil in the jerry.
For event manager Paul Kelly and his team, the work on this year's event started just after the finish of the 07 race. The remoteness of the region and the unique requirements of a desert-style event test even the best organisers. The close-knit community of Carnarvon and the endless enthusiasm of the Gascoyne Off-Road Racing Club is the main reason for the huge success this event is enjoying. Hundreds of hours of pre-event work and thousands of kilometres travelled with course surveying just a part of the overall logistics required. For the Gas Dash, communications, hospitality and of course safety are major priorities. The event now recognised as one of the best of its kind.
Now that was showing initiative. I got a better one.
Day 2 of this great race is what most of the competitors here were initially drawn by. This is the famous Gascoyne River, and running down this for over 140 kilometres is a big part of today's action. From the air it all looks very peaceful. The stunning backdrop of the tranquil water pools, magnificent tree-lined sections, and of course the smooth river sand all lit up brightly by the morning sun. However, strapped into the race cars and seen from ground level, it all changes. The flat-out top gear sections can quickly turn into a tricky maze of tight tracks. Rocky sections climbing in and out of the riverbed, and of course the soft sand ready to catch even the most experienced dash competitor. It's 7 a.m. Sunday morning, the 86 car heads the field away. Travis Robinson behind the wheel feeling pretty good about getting out of jail yesterday. His drama's paling by comparison to some of his fellow Auto Division runners. Smooth and fast is what's required in the early sections before getting into the river proper. It would be critical that they get off to a good start. Their 12.5-minute lead can quickly get eaten up in this event. The second out-of-bounds car would be next to tackle the section to Rocky Pool. Brian's experience tells him this is where he will need to push hard. After a DNF on day 1, Bo Robinson would be reseated for safety and takes up his place third car away. And after a horror first day and also reseated, the beautifully turned out Pinjarra Engineering bat machine Rooster tails away in search of at least a trouble-free run. After a big effort on the day 1 loop, Ken Stiles will look to capitalise as he commences his run. In total, 21 cars would start day 2. The mix of tin tops and buggies, each with their own strategies as to how to tackle the changing conditions. For the smaller horsepower Suzukis, it throws up plenty of challenges. Well, it would seem that the event demons would strike hard early on this day, and barely 15 minutes into the run, dramas for the leading pair of Robinson and Curry. The 86 car had a power steering pump failure. They would first stop and try a fix, but in the end needed to push on as is. This of course made driving very difficult and slow going, in the process needing to pull over and let fellow competitors through. Now, up ahead, the 84 car of Dad Brian would simply drive out of sight. The awesome Porter would churn up the river with the high horsepowered Chevy, loving every kilometre. The 2 times winner would make all the checkpoints and build a gap of over 3.5 minutes by the time he reached the halfway rest halt at Rocky Pool. The now second out of bounds machine of Bo would be next to blast past the stricken 86 car. The Mendiola would power its way down the river with a good clean run, making up for some of yesterday's disappointment. It seemed that the rest of the pro buggy field would also be struck down. Here, the Rentons needing to pull over after they had already overtaken the parked up Bat car of Brad Cooper. The machine would have water in the ECU, causing the engine to die. A heap of time lost to clear the moisture, but at least they would make it to Rocky Pool. Just a little back in the field, the Ken Styles 199 car would be making good ground with the dramas all around in the category. The lack of suspension travel on his machine, not ideal for the river, and later on past this point, it would cost him dearly with the car bogged and 30 minutes to get it out. It wasn't all doom and gloom for the Auto Boys, however. Although having to slow a few kilometres out of Rocky Pool with a plug lead off, the rangy of Armour was doing a great job. The extra power with the new engine fitted since last year made light work of the river sand and the crew very pleased. The pressure-vac Land Rover Justin Yakish behind the wheel would have a great start to the second day of competition. The 888 Extreme 4-wheel drive machine would in fact set a time 4th fastest to Rocky Pool, and then back that up with a top 10 to the finish. Consistency over the event would reward this crew with 4th outright in the auto division. Another that would be pretty happy with their weekend's work would be the combination of Young and Bairstow. A class win and 5th outright their 08 Dash result. For the 2 out front of this moto race, Warren Strange and rising star Paul Brown, it would be a full-on tussle with nothing held back. Brown would be keeping the 59 machine pinned on full throttle at every opportunity, and from the air his absolute commitment plain to see. Perhaps with not too much to lose and plenty to gain, his pace was a little too hot. This the aftermath of a heavy fall. Evidence of the severity of this crash, the youngster taking his time getting back on board. He, of course, eventually does get back on and continues with his challenge. Brown's problem now allowed Warren to stretch out a handy lead, and once in the river unleashed the awesome power of the Aprilia. With a healthy lead, it was shaping up for a good run into Rocky Pool. Well, as we all know, motorsport can be very cruel, and for Warren, it was about to get mean. A miscalculation and 5k short, the big Aprilia coughed to a standstill, out of fuel. By the time he got assistance, it would crash him from 1st to 12th position. What would be negatives for these boys quickly turned into big pluses for the chasing pack. This is Vern Strange checking to see if young Paul Brown was okay, before putting his head down and continuing the fight to make up the lost ground from yesterday. At this stage, he would be unaware of brother Warren's problem. For Vern, the trailing dust of the bikes in front would be more than enough incentive to give it all he had. His hard work would bring big rewards. On this section alone, he would pick off the riders in front, including passing the stricken Warren. As he powers towards Rocky Pool, passing our camera point, he celebrates with the number 1 sign. Vern Strange will be the first bike into Rocky Pool, and he's ecstatic. Not to be outdone, and after a huge ride down the river, that man, Paul Brown, would be second quickest into Rocky Pool. That's one gutsy performance. Third into the rest halt, and well pleased, Honda rider Ivan Ursig. Scott Rhodes on the number 5 Kawasaki would be another with a good run on the second leg of the event. 4th fastest time into Rocky Pool, a fine result. And rounding out the top 5 into the pool, Leon Clare on board the 450 Yamaha. KTM rider Adam Clay put in a big effort on the first part of day 2. His clean, fast style netting him first in class for the run into the pool, and in the process the lead of the over 250cc two-stroke category. For the up to 250cc four-stroke, the 77 bike of Wade Bransgrove would continue his dominance. The quad racers would of course take up where they left off on Leg 1. Richard Maxted screaming down the river, and this year choosing to run a Polaris. The independent rear suspension very much to his liking, and first place into Rocky Pool, also putting a smile on his dial. Ivan Abreu would keep up the pressure, with Pete Skender putting in a great run to be third quickest to the halt on board the Kawasaki. Another of the big movers, William Neuholt, his Raptor doing the business and keeping him among the leaders. Now, way back and still in the river section, Travis Robinson would work overtime to try and at least get the 86 car into Rocky Pool. Having had service from the crew at the second river checkpoint and makeshift repairs completed, it would just not be his day. The steering failing again, making turning the Black Beast in tight spots almost impossible. In the end, the event over, beached in a soft part of the river. In a totally opposite situation, Robinson Sr. would crank the porter up and flash past the finish. He and co-driver Matthew Fong taking out the event with an awesome display of raw power on the day's 2 sections. The second out-of-bounds car of Bo Robinson and Roy Lukey's would take fastest for the Rocky Pool to Carnarvon section, to at least take some positive from a not-so-great showing. The bad luck of yesterday countered with a clean and fast run for the Mendiola today. A spectacular result for the 199 style rear crew, although a hiccup in the river earlier, 4th fastest on the last section, and perseverance over the weekend netted 2nd outright in the auto division, a great end to a tough 2 days. Most Dash competitors know by now that one thing you never do in this event is give up. That's exactly what the local Renton combination must have kept saying, as they not only managed to get to the finish, but they picked up a very handy 3rd overall. Super job by that team. Back at Rocky Pool, the bike field readied themselves for the final sprint to the finish. Most had a fair idea of what was to come, and they were bang on. Yep, Vern Strange in full attack mode. This is his specialty, flat out, 180 kilometres per hour plus, 110% commitment, huge jumps, and for the number 1 man, clear air all the way in. Just under 1 hour and 9 minutes for the journey. For Strange, this would be his masterclass of just how to ride one of these very powerful machines at ultra high speeds. He's run into Carnarvon faultless, and as he neared the finish line at the racecourse complex, he took the time to entertain the fans with some freestyle. Vern Strange maintains his number 1 plate and takes the 08 race. Second quickest into Carnarvon, and perhaps the unluckiest competitor, Warren Strange. It would be all about what could have been. That said, a fine ride over the fast section, eventually netting him 10th place. With a time of 1:11:32 over the distance, Ivan Ersic would cap off a great event, taking 3rd outright in the Moto division. This would be just reward for a very good all-round performance. Taking the fight up to the more fancied runners, young Carnarvon ace Paul Brown putting together an awesome weekend of riding. This kid has certainly got what it takes in the desert races and will obviously be one to watch in the future. 2nd outright in the 2008 Gas Dash, what a brilliant effort. Kawasaki rider Wade Bransgrove would continue his good form and take out the up to 250cc 4-stroke class. Adam Clay, the over 250cc two-stroke class winner, would put in a very good time on the last section. On board the KTM, his total time was good enough for 12th place overall. Events like this are notorious for shoveling out hard luck, and for experienced quadman Richard Maxted, that's exactly what he would be dealt. After grabbing the class lead in the river, his machine would develop an engine problem late on in the final section, and believe it or not, expire just 500 metres from the finish line. After just over 500 Ks, it would be Ivan Abreu who would take the silverware in the quad division. Not far from the lead all weekend, quick, consistent and of course on board a reliable machine, the 08 Gas Dash title would be his. Ex-golf pro William Nyholt would show that he is a definite all-round sportsman. A fantastic effort over the distance, second in class, his well-deserved prize. Rounding out the top three in the quad class, Dale Tribick on board the Honda TRX 450. With the Gas Dash appealing to such a wide group of enthusiasts, it's not surprising to see the field of female competitors constantly expanding. The moto division, the quads, and of course behind the wheel and co-driving in the auto class, all categories that have attracted the ladies. Winner of the auto division, Brian Robinson, cements himself as the one to beat after grabbing 3 from 3 on this awesome event. There's no doubting this man's talent. Knowing when to push to the absolute limit and when to ease off is a big key to his success. The two-wheeled moto champ Vern Strange put together the ride of his life to overcome huge obstacles that would have stopped lesser competitors in their tracks. It's the mark of a true champion that after what would seem to be an impossible task, he put his head down, risking all to come out on top. This is a quality competitor rising to the occasion, back-to-back wins and very well deserved. It's been hot, dusty and dangerous, but the field of riders, drivers and crews have conquered 2 gruelling days of this unique event. There's plenty of very sore bodies, a heap of broken machinery and in some cases shattered dreams. But that's motorsport, and the 2008 Kickstarters Gascoyne Dash has been another huge success and keeps moving forward as one of the nation's great desert races.